In this class we want to talk about budget variance. As we'll see in a few moments, that is just simply the difference between the actual figure and the budgeted figure. It's the gap between the two. So this class will look at the idea of variance. It will look at, put simply, the variance is the difference between the budget figure and the actual figure. It'll look at the relationship between the budget, what the budget has allocated, and what was actually spent or received, or whatever the budget is about. And we'll see that a variance may be both favourable, say under budget, in the case of expenditure. Let's say the budget was for allowed up to 1,000 and 800 was spent. That's an under payment, so it's under budget. That's favourable, that's good. And it could be also adverse, over budget, which means there was over expenditure. Now, companies have many types of budgets, and these are just a few: office expenses, travel expenses, promotions, and so on. So companies have many types of budgets. In practice there may be many more than this, and the budgets themselves, the individual budgets may be grouped, say for example, into a marketing budget or a production budget or an administrative budget or an R&D budget. So we may have lots of smaller budgets fitting into a bigger budget. So the marketing budget, for example, could include office expenses, particularly the marketing office, travel expenses to ensure that the marketing people may travel to meetings and for promotions and so on. And with production, well, labour, raw materials, stores. So we're getting this idea of almost a hierarchy of budgets. And pursuing it further, we have a master budget. We have the very top budget, which allocates sums to the marketing budget and to the production budget. And then the marketing budget allocates sums to the office expenses, the travel expenses and promotions. And likewise for production. So we have this type of cascading hierarchy, with the very top budget being the master budget. That's the one that senior management deal with. Now let's look at an example of variance and look at how this could work out in practice. Well, for a start, let's just look at an illustrative budget. And so we have items in the budget, such as staff costs, marketing manager, assisting marketing manager, so on. Running all the way down through the next layer, which would be capital cost, company cars, photocopiers. And then we have production costs, the team leader, design team, quality manager. But whatever the appropriate headings for the business are, they could be listed out in this fashion. Not necessarily the ones I've got on the screen here, just whatever is required according to the business. Now, let's say in January, those were the expenditure items. And this is the itemized account, let's say. So marketing manager 2,000, assistant marketing manager 1,500. So we've got this idea of some costs in January. Likewise in February, if it's a salary, for example, to the marketing manager, the 2,000 in January would be perhaps the same in February. But there might be some variation across some of the other items in the budget. In March, we could have a set of figures like that. So if we add those three together, we'd get the first quarter being January, February and March. So the first quarter would be something like that. Now, if we just add up, I'll just put the cursor onto the screen. Okay, so we've got 2,000 plus 2,000 plus 2,000, which is 6. 1,500, 3 times 4,500. 1,000 three times, 3,000. And if you add this up, we get this figure here, 13,500. Likewise, of course, if you add it horizontally, you must get the same. So we've got this idea of the budget. The first quarter budget is that. And that's what's budgeted for the 3 periods. Let's say the actual expenditure for the first quarter was what we've written here. Now let's say the marketing secretary here is an interesting one, because there was a budget here for 1,000 for each of them, and that comes to 3,000, which is what's in the budget. But the actual is 0. So there was no marketing secretary. There was nobody working in that capacity. So there was a budget for 3,000 and there was nothing spent. Down here the budget is 600, but 900 was spent. So there's a difference there. And there's a difference in many of the other ones as well. So we write in the variance column, and the variance column simply looks at the difference between the budget and the actual. Well, here there is no difference, so it's 0. Again, 4,500 budget, 4,500 spent, 0. In this case, there is an underspend, 3,000. So the subtotal on the variance side is 3,000. Over here, the budget was 3,000, spent 1,000, so 2,000 up. On the other hand, on photocopiers, the budget was £600 and £900 was spent, so it's down £300. So you can work out the variances down here. And that's an indication of how the overall performance of the individual budgets has been in that time period. Totals really don't matter too much on this one. What we're more interested in is the variance across here. What this figure is, the actual compared to the budgeted. So for example, on a -1 here, on a negative, where there is an overspend, managers might want to look at why was there an overspend? What can be done about it? Can anything be done about it? Maybe the budget needs to be changed, or it could be that perhaps the company needs to look at a different supplier, a cheaper supplier. In the design team down here there was 3,350 overspend. Well, that's considerable. So perhaps they want to look at how this could be adjusted. So the idea of variance is just looking at the difference between what was in the budget and what was actual, and what it does for each one individually, looking across each one, which is the real benefit of this type of variance analysis. Looking across each one, it focuses the attention of management. It says where there was an overspend or where there was an underspend. And I suppose ideally, if the budgets are correct, it should be 0. So wherever there are figures plus and minus, there may be some adjustments to be made. Perhaps adjustments to the budget, or as I said, changing production or changing supplier, negotiating a different price, whatever. So I think variance is a very straightforward idea. Once the budgets are in place, that's how they're measured, by their success or failure to meet their own standards, to set the figures that they have set out. That concludes this talk, so thank you for watching.